My children sold my grandson's 1967 Mustang, the one my late husband restored with his own hands and left specifically for Tyler, for $63,000. They used the money to buy a boat for my daughter's stepchildren. When I found out, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I smiled and said that car was. My son turned white. My daughter dropped her wine glass. They had no idea what was coming. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. My name is Eleanor, and I am 6 to 7 years old. I live in a small house in Columbus, Ohio, the same house where I raised my two children, buried my husband, and watched my family slowly turn into strangers. I always thought the worst part of getting older would be the aches in my bones or the names that slip away like water through my fingers. I was wrong. The worst part is watching the people you created decide you no longer matter. The worst part is realizing that the love you poured into them for decades meant nothing when money entered the equation. It started on a Tuesday, which is important because Tuesdays were the days I visited my grandson Tyler. He was 19, finishing his second year at Ohio State, and every Tuesday afternoon, he would come to my house and we would sit in the garage together, not to talk about anything important, just to be near each other, and near the car. That garage had become a sacred space for us, a place where time moved differently, where the memory of Frank still lingered in every corner. The car, I need you to understand what that car meant before I tell you what they did to it. I need you to understand why an old Mustang could break a family apart, and why losing it felt like losing Frank all over again. My husband Frank bought that Mustang the year Tyler was born. It was a shell back then, rusted and forgotten in some barn outside of Dayton, covered in dust and bird droppings and years of neglect. Frank said he saw it and something clicked. He told me, Eleanor, by the time that boy is old enough to drive, this car will be ready for him. And he meant it with every fiber of his being. For 19 years, Frank worked on that Mustang. Every weekend, every holiday, every spare hour he could find. He sanded the rust until his hands bled. He rebuilt the engine piece by piece, ordering parts from across the country, winning weeks for deliveries, never losing patience. He reupholstered the seats with his own hands, learning the craft from YouTube videos and old library books. Tyler used to sit on a stool beside him, handing him tools before he even knew their names. Those two had a bond I could never fully understand, a silent language of wrenches and oil and shared purpose. Frank passed away 3 years ago. Heart attack, quick and merciless, the way he would have wanted if he had to go at all. One moment he was standing in the kitchen making coffee, and the next he was on the floor, gone before the paramedics could even arrive. But before he died, he did something my children never expected. He put the car in a trust. Tyler was the beneficiary. I was the trustee. The car was never supposed to be sold, never supposed to leave our family, never supposed to be touched by anyone who did not understand what it carried inside its metal frame. Frank knew people. He knew how greed could transform even the kindest hearts. He prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. My children did not know about the trust. Frank never told them, and I never saw a reason to bring it up. My son Kevin and my daughter Brenda had never shown much interest in the car anyway. They thought it was a waste of time, an old man's obsession, a pile of junk taking up space in a garage that could be used for something practical like storage or a home gym. They did not see what I saw. They did not see Frank's hands, cracked and calloused, working late into the night because he wanted to leave something real for his grandson. Something that could not be measured in dollars. Something that carried his soul. That Tuesday, I pulled into my driveway and noticed something wrong immediately. The garage door was open. Not all the way, just a few inches, like someone had closed it in a hurry and not checked to make sure it latched. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at that gap, feeling a cold weight settle in my stomach. The afternoon sun was bright, but suddenly everything seemed darker. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself Tyler probably stopped by and forgot to close it properly. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be lies. I walked up the driveway slowly. My knees are not what they used to be, and I have learned to take my time. Every step felt heavier than the last. The closer I got, the more the silence bothered me. Usually, even from outside, you could smell the garage. Oil, leather, that particular mustiness that old cars carry like a cologne. Frank used to say the garage smelled like history. But that day, the air smelled like nothing. Like absence. Like something essential had been ripped away. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The space where the Mustang had lived for 19 years was empty. Not just empty, but clean. Someone had swept the floor. Someone had removed the toolboxes Frank kept along the wall. Someone had taken down the old calendar from 1987 that Frank refused to throw away. Someone had erased every trace of the car as if it had never existed at all. As if those 19 years of love and labor had been nothing but a dream. I stood there for a long time. I do not know how long. Minutes, maybe. Maybe longer. My brain kept trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Kept trying to find an explanation that did not involve betrayal. Maybe Tyler moved it. Maybe there was a leak in the roof and someone took it somewhere safe. Maybe I was dreaming. And I would wake up any moment to the sound of Frank humming in the garage while he polished the chrome. Maybe this was all a terrible nightmare. But I was not dreaming. And somewhere deep in my chest, in that place where mothers keep the truths they do not want to face, I already knew exactly who had done this. I knew it was my own children. And that knowledge hurt more than anything I had ever felt in my 6 to 7 years of life. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day. But YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. To understand why my children did what they did, you need to understand the family I built and the family it became. You need to see the cracks that formed over years, the resentments that grew in silence, the way love can curdle into something unrecognizable when people stop seeing each other as human beings. Kevin is my oldest, 44 years old, an accountant in Cincinnati, married to a woman named Stacy who smiles with her mouth but never with her eyes. They have no children of their own, which Stacy blames on her career and Kevin blames on timing. But I have always suspected they simply do not like each other enough to create something permanent together. Their marriage has always felt more like a business arrangement than a love story. Kevin was always the practical one, the one who counted pennies and measured worth in spreadsheets and bottom lines. He loved his father, I believe, but he never understood him. He thought Frank's devotion to the Mustang was foolish, sentimental, a waste of resources that could have been invested in something sensible like stocks or real estate. I remember one Thanksgiving, years ago, when Kevin looked at Frank tinkering in the garage and said, "Dad, you could have bought a brand new car for what you spent on that thing." Frank just smiled and kept working. He never bothered explaining himself to people who would not understand. That was his way. He let his actions speak. Brenda is 3 years younger than Kevin. She lives in Columbus, close enough to visit but rarely does unless she needs something. She married a man named Doug who brought 2 children from a previous marriage, a boy named Chase, who was now 16, and a girl named Amber who was 14. Brenda adopted them officially, threw a big party about it, posted pictures on social media with captions about blended families and chosen love. She made it seem like she had won some kind of parenting award. But I watched her with those children, and I watched her with Tyler, my son Kevin's boy, from a brief relationship that ended before Tyler learned to walk. The difference was obvious to anyone paying attention. Obvious and painful. Chase and Amber got everything. Dance lessons, summer camps, private tutors, a new car for Chase's 16th birthday that cost more than my first house. They got a trip to Florida every spring, designer clothes, the latest phones. They got attention and praise and endless patience. Tyler got leftovers, hand-me-down attention, obligatory birthday cards that arrived late, the kind of polite disinterest that families use to hide their favoritism. When Tyler was younger, he used to ask me why Aunt Brenda never remembered his birthday on time. I never had an answer that would not break his heart. Tyler's mother left when he was 2. Her name was Sarah, and she was young and scared and not ready to be anyone's mother. I do not blame her as much as I used to. Some people are not built for the weight of raising a child. Kevin tried to raise Tyler alone for a while, but he was working 60-hour weeks and barely keeping his head above water. Eventually, about 6 months after Sarah left, he asked if Tyler could stay with us during the week. Frank and I said yes without hesitation. We did not even have to discuss it. That little boy needed stability, needed love, needed someone to show up for him. For the next 15 years, Tyler was more our son than our grandson. He slept in the room down the hall, ate breakfast at our table, did his homework at our kitchen counter, while Frank tinkered in the garage. He took his first steps in our living room. He lost his first tooth while eating dinner with us. He became ours in every way that mattered. Kevin visited when he could, which was not often. Once a month, sometimes less. He would take Tyler out for ice cream, buy him a toy, then drop him back off with us like he was returning a rental. Brenda visited even less. When she did come by, she spent most of her time on her phone, barely acknowledging Tyler's existence. When Frank died, something shifted in my family. It was subtle at first, like a crack in a foundation that you do not notice until the walls start leaning. The funeral was barely over before Kevin started asking questions about the house. How much was it worth? Had I thought about selling? Would I consider downsizing? The questions felt like probes, like he was testing the perimeter of my life for weaknesses. Brenda started suggesting I might be happier somewhere smaller, somewhere with less maintenance, somewhere with people my own age. That phrase, people my own age, always made me want to scream. As if I needed to be sorted into a category and stored away with others of my kind. I ignored them. I had lived in that house for 41 years. I had planted the garden in the backyard with my own hands. I had watched my children take their first steps on that living room carpet. I had held Frank's hand in that kitchen on the night he proposed. I was not going anywhere. But the questions kept coming. And then the suggestions turned into pressure. Kevin mentioned assisted living facilities with names like Golden Sunset and Peaceful Meadows. Brenda talked about how hard it must be for me to keep up with everything alone. How worried she was about me falling. How dangerous it was for an older woman to live by herself. They spoke slowly when they talked to me, enunciating every word like I had gone deaf overnight. They exchanged glances when I forgot a name or lost my keys. Glances that said what they were too polite to speak out loud. Mom is losing it. Mom cannot be trusted. Mom needs to be managed. I was not losing anything. I was grieving. There was a difference, but my children could not see it. Or maybe they just did not want to. Tyler was the only one who treated me the same. He still came on Tuesdays, even though he was busy with college and part-time work. He still sat with me in the garage, even though being there without Frank was painful for both of us. He would run his hand along the hood of the Mustang and say nothing. And I would sit in Frank's old chair and say nothing. And somehow that silence held more love than all the words my other children had ever spoken. 6 months after Frank died, Tyler got his license. I handed him the keys to the Mustang and watched his face transform. He did not whoop or cheer or do any of the things young men are supposed to do when they get their first car. He just held the keys like they were sacred. Like he understood exactly what they meant and the weight they carried. Grandpa wanted you to have it, I told him. It was always yours. From the very beginning. Tyler nodded. He could not speak. His eyes were wet, but he did not cry. And that was enough. He drove it carefully, the way Frank would have wanted. Never too fast, never recklessly. He washed it every Sunday. Kept it parked in my garage because his apartment did not have covered parking. Came by to check on it even when he was buried in exams. That car was his connection to Frank, his inheritance. His proof that someone in this family had seen him and chosen him, and loved him without conditions. My other children saw it differently. They saw $63,000 sitting in my garage, gathering dust. Wasted on a boy who was not even really family according to the way Brenda calculated bloodlines. They saw an opportunity waiting to be seized. And one day, while I was at a doctor's appointment that Kevin had insisted I schedule, they took it. I called Kevin first. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. But my voice was steady. 40 years of marriage teaches you how to control your voice, even when everything inside you is screaming. Frank always said I had a poker face that could fool the devil himself. I needed that skill now more than ever. Where is the car? I asked without preamble. There was a pause. A long one. The kind of pause that tells you everything you need to know before a single word is spoken. I could hear him breathing on the other end, calculating, strategizing. Mom, Kevin said slowly, carefully, we need to talk about this in person. No, I said. We need to talk about it now. Where is the Mustang? Another pause. Then a sigh. The sigh of a man who has been caught and is calculating how to spin it in his favor. We sold it, he said. Brenda and I talked it over, and we decided it was the best thing for everyone. It was a family decision. I gripped the phone tighter. The best thing for everyone. It was just sitting there, Mom. Depreciating. Taking up space. And Tyler doesn't need a car like that. It's impractical. It gets terrible gas mileage. The insurance alone would eat up his budget. We were doing him a favor, really? He'll thank us someday. That car was not yours to sell, Mom. His voice took on that patient, condescending tone I had come to hate over the past 3 years. That tone that said he was the adult now, and I was a child who needed managing. We have power of attorney. We discussed this, remember? After Dad died, you signed the papers so we could help you manage things. I felt something cold move through my chest. Power of attorney. Yes, I had signed those papers. Kevin had presented them as a precaution, a way to make sure bills got paid if I ever became incapacitated, a safety net for emergencies. Just paperwork, he had said. Nothing to worry about. I had not read every page. I had trusted my son. I had trusted my own blood. That power of attorney was for emergencies, I said quietly. For if I could not make decisions myself, I am perfectly capable of making decisions. Are you, though? Kevin's voice had an edge now, sharp and dismissive. Mom, you have been struggling since Dad died. You forget things. You repeat yourself. You left the stove on twice last month. We are worried about you. We are trying to protect you. I am grieving. That is not the same as incompetent. The doctors, what doctors? I demanded. The appointment you made me go to today. The one where they asked me questions about what year it is, and who the president is like I am a child. Did you tell them to evaluate me, Kevin? Did you tell them your mother is losing her mind so you could have something on paper? Silence. A long, guilty silence. We are trying to help you, he said finally. The money from the car will go toward your care. We are looking at some very nice facilities in the area. Places where you would be comfortable, where you would not have to worry about maintaining a house or remembering to take your medications or, I want to talk to Brenda. Mom, now. He put me on hold. I waited, listening to the silence, feeling my heart pound against my ribs. When Brenda's voice came through, it was bright and false, the voice she used for difficult clients at her real estate job. The voice that made me want to reach through the phone and shake her. Mom. Kevin told me you were upset about the car. I totally understand. Change is hard, especially at your age. But this is really for the best. Chase and Amber have been wanting a boat for years and Doug found this amazing deal on a used one, and we thought, you bought a boat, I said flatly. For the family. We are going to take it out to Lake Erie this summer. You can come too, Mom. It will be so much fun. The kids are already so excited. We can make it a whole family thing. You sold my grandson's car to buy a boat for your stepchildren. Tyler is not. She caught herself, but not quickly enough. Tyler has plenty of time to buy his own car. He is young. He has his whole life ahead of him. Chase and Amber needed this. They have been through so much with the divorce, and Doug really wanted to do something special for them. And when Kevin mentioned that the Mustang was just sitting there, it was not just sitting there. It was Tyler's. It was always Tyler's. Was it though? I mean, legally, I repeated. You want to talk about legally? Mom, I don't know why you're making this into such a big deal. It's just a car. An old car that guzzles gas and needs constant repairs. We got a really good price for it, and the money is going to help everyone. Kevin is putting some aside for your future care, and we used part of it for the boat, and honestly, you should be thanking us. We handled everything so you didn't have to worry about it. I hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my empty garage for a long time after that, looking at the space where the Mustang used to be. The oil stain on the concrete was still there, a dark shadow in the shape of something that no longer existed. Frank's old coffee mug was still on the workbench, right where he had left it 3 years ago. I had never moved it. I had never been able to bring myself to wash it. Some mornings I still half expected to see him standing there, coffee in hand, humming along to the radio. My children thought I was senile. They thought I was a problem to be managed, an obstacle to be moved, a source of assets to be liquidated. They had looked at my life, at the home I built, at the things I loved, and they had seen dollar signs. Nothing more. Nothing less. But they had made a mistake. A very serious mistake. They did not know about the trust, and they had no idea that I had spent 41 years married to a man who trusted no one. When it came to protecting the people he loved, Frank had seen this coming. Maybe not the specifics, but the shape of it. He had watched Kevin count pennies since he was a teenager. He had watched Brenda calculate worth in every relationship she had. He had known, in that quiet way of his, that our children would eventually try to take what was not theirs. So he had made sure they could not succeed. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had not called in 3 years. A number Frank had given me the week before he died, written on a scrap of paper with 4 words beneath it, if you ever need him. The phone rang twice. Then a voice answered, calm and professional. Harrison Law Offices. How may I help you? I took a deep breath. My name is Eleanor Patterson. I believe you handled my husband's estate. Frank Patterson. I need to speak with Mr. Harrison about a trust he created. And I need to speak with him today. It's urgent. If you want to know how the story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free and it helps me a lot. Harrison was a small man with sharp eyes and a memory like a steel trap. He had been Frank's lawyer for over 20 years, handling everything from our wills to the purchase of our house to various small legal matters that came up over the decades. When I walked into his office that afternoon, he looked at me like he had been expecting me for a long time. Mrs. Patterson, he said, gesturing to a chair. I wondered when I would hear from you. I sat down heavily. My legs were tired. My heart was tired. Everything was tired. But my mind was clear, clearer than it had been in months, maybe years. Anger has a way of sharpening your focus. They sold the car, I said without preamble. Harrison nodded slowly, his expression unsurprised. I assumed as much when you called. Your son contacted me about 6 months ago, asking about your husband's assets. He wanted to know what Frank had left behind. What was in the estate? What could be liquidated? I told him everything was in order, and there was nothing to discuss. He did not seem satisfied with that answer. He didn't tell me he called you, no. I imagine he did not, Mr. Harrison opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, worn at the edges from years of handling. Your husband was a cautious man, Mrs. Patterson. A wise man. He came to me shortly after Tyler was born and asked me to create a trust. The beneficiary was Tyler. The trustee was you. The asset was a 1967 Ford Mustang, valued at the time at approximately $15,000. It's worth more now. Considerably more. The last appraisal, which your husband requested 2 years before his death, placed a value at $72,000. He slid a document across the desk toward me. Your husband also took additional precautions. The vehicle identification number was recorded, photographs were taken from every angle, and the title was placed in the trust's name. Not your name. Not your children's names. The trust's name. I stared at the paper. Frank's handwriting was at the bottom. That familiar scrawl I had seen on grocery lists and birthday cards, and love notes left on my pillow for 40 years. He had signed this document, knowing someday I might need it, knowing our children might become strangers, knowing that love alone would not protect Tyler from greed. What does this mean? I asked quietly, though I was beginning to understand Dotmer. Harrison folded his hands. It means that your children sold property that did not belong to them. It does not matter that they had power of attorney over your assets. The car was not your asset. It was the trust's asset. They had no legal right to sell it, and the buyer has no legal right to keep it. The sale is invalid. Can I get it back? Yes? He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I will need to make some calls. Track down the buyer, explain the situation, file the necessary paperwork. If they resist, we can pursue legal action, but I suspect they will not want to. No one wants to be caught holding stolen property, especially not a collector who cares about his reputation. Stolen property. The words hung in the air like smoke. What about my children? I asked Dotmer. Harrison's expression did not change. That depends on what you want to do. We have options. I thought about Kevin, who had looked at me and seen a problem to be solved. Brenda, who had taken my grandson's inheritance and turned it into a boat for children who had never even met Frank. The way they had spoken to me, slowly and carefully, like I was already gone. Like I was already dead and just hadn't noticed yet. I want the car back, I said firmly. And I want them to know exactly what they did. I want them to understand that they did not get away with anything, Mr. Harrison nodded. I can arrange that. He made the calls that afternoon while I sat in his office, listening to one-sided conversations that would change everything. The buyer, a collector from Cleveland named Richard Morris, was furious when he learned the truth. He had paid $63,000 in good faith. He had the bill of sale signed by Kevin. He had done his due diligence, or so he thought. He had everything except a legal right to the car. Dotmer. Harrison explained the situation calmly, professionally, the way lawyers do when they know they are holding all the cards. The car was part of a trust. The sale was unauthorized and therefore invalid. Dotmer. Morris could return the vehicle and pursue the sellers for his money, or he could face legal action for possessing property obtained through fraud. The choice was his. Dotmer. Morris chose to return the car. He was not happy about it, but he was smart enough to know when he was beaten. 2 days later, I got a phone call from Brenda. Her voice was shaking. Stripped of all its professional polish, Mom. What did you do? I protected what was Tyler's. That collector is threatening to sue us. He wants his money back. Kevin is freaking out and Doug is furious because we already spent part of it on the boat, and the deposit is non-refundable, and perhaps you should have thought of that before you sold something that was not yours. We had power of attorney. We were trying to help you. You were trying to help yourselves. I kept my voice even, though my hands were trembling against the phone. You looked at that car and saw money. You looked at Tyler and saw someone who did not matter. You looked at me and saw someone who could be managed, manipulated, pushed aside. You were wrong on all counts. Mom, I am not finished. The words came out harder than I intended, but I did not take them back. Your father spent 19 years building that car for Tyler. 19 years of weekends and holidays and late nights. 19 years of bloody knuckles and sore backs and trips to the auto parts store. He did it because he loved that boy. Because Tyler was the only one of his grandchildren who ever sat with him, who ever cared, who ever saw him as more than an old man with old hobbies. Brenda was crying now. Mom, please, the car is coming back. Tyler will receive what his grandfather left him. And you and Kevin will figure out how to pay back Mr. Morris, because I am finished cleaning up the messes you make and calling it love. I am finished being the easy one. I hung up. And for the first time in 3 years, Since Frank took his last breath on the kitchen floor and left me alone in a world full of strangers, I felt something other than grief. I felt like myself again. I felt like the woman Frank had married. I felt powerful. The car arrived on a Saturday morning. A flatbed truck pulled into my driveway, and two men in work gloves carefully rolled the Mustang back into the garage, back into the space that had been empty for 3 agonizing weeks, back where it belonged. The chrome gleamed in the morning light like it was happy to be home. Tyler was there. I had called him the night before and told him everything. Not the short version, not the gentle version, but the whole ugly truth. His uncle and aunt had sold his grandfather's car. They had taken his inheritance, the thing Frank had spent 19 years building, and turned it into a boat for children who had never even met Frank, who did not know the sound of his laugh or the way he smelled like motor oil and Old Spice. Tyler had not said much on the phone. He never did when he was processing something painful. He had inherited that from Frank too. But when the car rolled off the truck and he saw it sitting in the garage again, whole and undamaged, he walked over and put his hand on the hood. He stood there for a long time, not moving, not speaking, just touching the metal like he was making sure it was real, like he was saying hello to an old friend. Grandpa knew, I said quietly. He knew something like this might happen. That's why he put it in a trust. He was protecting you even after he was gone. Tyler nodded slowly. He always said people get weird about money. I thought he was just being cynical. He was right. He usually was. Tyler turned to look at me. His eyes were red, but he was not crying. He was angry. A quiet, controlled anger that reminded me so much of Frank had made my chest ache. It was the kind of anger that does not explode. It burns slow and steady, and it never forgets. What happens to them? He asked. Uncle Kevin and Aunt Brenda. They owe Mr. Morris $63,000. The boat was financed so they can return it, but they will lose the down payment and their credit will take a hit. Probably a big one. Kevin is already talking about selling his condo in Cincinnati just to cover his share. Good. The word was hard and final. I did not argue with it. I felt the same way. The following weeks were complicated. Kevin tried calling me several times, but I did not answer. I let it go to voicemail every time. Brenda sent a letter, a long rambling thing full of apologies and explanations and phrases like we never meant to hurt anyone and family should stick together and you're blowing this out of proportion. I read it once, then put it in a drawer and did not look at it again. Some words do not deserve a second reading. The power of attorney was revoked. Harrison helped me with that. He also helped me update my will, removing Kevin and Brenda entirely. The house would go to Tyler. The savings would go to Tyler. Everything I had spent my life building would go to the one person in my family who had never tried to take anything from me. The one person who had loved Frank not for what he could give, but for who he was. Are you sure about this, mister? Harrison asked when I signed the papers. This is a significant decision. You are essentially disinheriting your children. I am sure. I did not hesitate. My children made their choice when they emptied my garage. Now I am making mine. The final revelation came a month later when Mr. Harrison called me with news that made my blood run cold. He had been reviewing the power of attorney documents Kevin had presented, the ones I had signed after Frank's death, and he had found something troubling. You signed a limited power of attorney, he said carefully. It was supposed to apply only to specific accounts, and only in the event of your incapacitation. It was very narrow in scope, just as you and I discussed at the time. But the document your son used to sell the car was different. It was a general power of attorney, giving him broad control over all your assets. I felt cold all over. I did not sign a general power of attorney. No, Mr. Harrison agreed. You did not. The signature on the general document is similar to yours, but our handwriting expert believes it was forged. Forged. My own son had forged my signature. I sat with that knowledge for a long time after the call ended. It was one thing to know your children saw you as an obstacle. It was another to know they were willing to commit fraud to get you out of the way. It was another to know that your own son, the baby you held in your arms, the boy whose skin needs you bandaged, had looked at your signature and decided to fake it because you were in his way. Do you want to press charges, Mr. Harrison asked during our follow-up meeting. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Kevin in handcuffs. Kevin in court. Kevin explaining to a judge why he forged his mother's signature so he could sell his nephew's car and help his sister buy a boat. The public shame. The criminal record. The complete destruction of his life. No, I said finally, not yet. Let him live with the debt. Let him live with the shame. Let him wonder, every single day, whether today is the day his mother decides to make a phone call. Let him lie awake at night wondering if he's going to prison. It was petty, perhaps, Frank would have told me to rise above it, to be the bigger person, to forgive and move forward. But Frank was gone, and I was tired of being the bigger person. I was tired of letting my children mistake my kindness for weakness. I was tired of forgiving people who were not sorry. Let Kevin sweat. Let Brenda worry. Let them both understand, finally, that their mother was not the confused old woman they had convinced themselves she was. I was Eleanor Patterson. I had raised two children, buried a husband, and kept a family together for 40 years. I was not senile. I was not helpless. I was not someone to be managed or manipulated or pushed aside. I was not done. And they had no idea who they were dealing with. Tyler graduated last spring with honors. I sat in the audience at Ohio State, surrounded by strangers, and watched him walk across the stage to accept his diploma. I thought about Frank, about how proud he would have been, about how much he missed, about all the moments that death had stolen from him. Afterward, Tyler drove me home in the Mustang. The engine purred the way it always had, that deep, steady rumble that Frank used to say sounded like a heartbeat. We did not talk much during the drive. We did not need to. When we pulled into the driveway, Tyler turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, staring at the garage. "Grandma," he said quietly, "thank you." "For what?" "For fighting. For not letting them win. For not just accepting it." He turned to look at me, and I saw Frank in his eyes, in the shape of his jaw, in the way he held himself. Everyone else would have just let it go. Said it was just a car. Said it wasn't worth the trouble, said family is family. "But you didn't. It was never just a car," I said. "It was your grandfather's love. It was your future. It was proof that someone in this family saw you and chose you and believed you were worth fighting for." Tyler nodded slowly. "I won't forget that. Ever." "I know you won't." Kevin and Brenda have not spoken to me in over a year. I hear things through relatives, fragments of gossip that drift my way like leaves on the wind. Kevin sold his condo and moved into a small apartment on the edge of Cincinnati. His marriage to Stacy is falling apart under the weight of financial stress. Brenda and Doug are in marriage counseling, fighting about money, fighting about the boat, fighting about everything. Chase and Amber barely use the boat anyway. It sits in storage most of the year, costing money they do not have, a monument to choices they cannot undo. Sometimes I wonder if I was too hard on them. If I should have given them a chance to apologize, to make it right, to prove they were still the children I raised and not the strangers they had become. Sometimes, late at night, I miss them. Then I remember the empty garage, the forged signature, the way they spoke about Tyler like he was not really family, the way they spoke about me like I was already gone, the condescension in their voices, the pity in their eyes, the absolute certainty that they knew better than I did what my life should look like. No, I was not too hard. I was exactly hard enough. Tyler comes over every Sunday now. He washes the car in my driveway, just like he used to. And afterward we sit in the garage together and drink lemonade and talk about nothing important. Sometimes we talk about Frank. Sometimes we sit in the silence. Sometimes I tell him stories about when his grandfather was young, about how we met, about the life we built together. And sometimes when the light is right and the breeze carries the smell of motor oil and leather, I swear I can hear Frank humming in the corner, satisfied that his boy got what he deserved. Satisfied that his wife was stronger than anyone expected. Satisfied that love, in the end, won. The car is safe. Tyler is safe. And I am still here. Still standing. Still refusing to disappear. My children thought they could take what they wanted and explain it away with smiles and excuses. They thought I would crumble. They thought I was old and weak and easy to fool. They were wrong. If you enjoyed the story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there.